What do you think is the most often broken of the 10 Commandments? Now, if you watch the news and see the incessant wars blighting the globe, you may think it's, "You shall not kill." Or in this political season, with these politicians of every stripe stretching the facts this way and that, you may think that it's, "You shall not bear false witness." But the truth is that it is something more basic than those, more close to home for almost all of us. It's, "You shall keep the Sabbath holy." Now, the Merriam-Webster official definition of the word Sabbath is the seventh day of the week observed from Friday evening to Saturday evening as a day of rest and worshipped by Jews and some Christians, or Sunday observed among Christians as a day of rest and worship. This more likely would have been the definition that was being thought of when the synagogue leaders addressed Jesus for healing that woman. The thing is, the Sabbath is more than just a specific day. It can be any day or any time. Any time that you decide to take to spend in prayer with God can be considered time spent in Sabbath. Now, if we were to take the definition literally, then every pastor standing at an altar on Sunday morning is breaking the Sabbath. So we need to look at other times and days to spend time quietly with the Lord, making another day or time our Sabbath time. Now, we live in a world where many believe that time is money, and we need to always be working and being productive. Now, our time is important to us, and if we take a day off, then we are thought to be unproductive, or some would even call us lazy. And there are many people who think that you have to always be working and making money to have that wonderful home, car, or other material possession. For many people, even just taking an hour of downtime is considered to be a poor use of their time. When we are not working, we are always busying ourselves at home, getting things done around the house. We are still doing something with our time and not with God. Now, there are those of us out there that work 6 days a week to build up that bank account so as to be able to take that wonderful vacation that is thought to be our wonderful time of rest. However, when you think about it, many of us, when going on vacation, actually are spending that time going to see things or in activities to enjoy the places that we have gone to. In the end, this vacation is not truly about rest, nor is it ever really spent giving time to God. My little brother, I love talking about him, but he's one of those who spends hours of time away from his wife and kids, working hard to obtain his wonderful paycheck. And he does this so that he can afford the many vacations he loves to take with his wife and children to places like Disney or Adventureland or his newest enjoyment, Comic Cons. Now, he worries about the time that he spends away from his family, and he asked me one time if it is really worth all that work for these family times together. Now, my advice to him, I said, in respect to the family time, working the hours he does to afford the things they can do is fine because of the quality of time they're getting together as a family. What I didn't tell him, though, was that there is no time left in his equation for Sabbath. No time left for God. Now, my brother, he's not one who would be worried about spending time in prayer and rest with God. He knows about God and he has his faith, just not a serious faith life, which I'm always praying for him for that one. So in his eyes, he is working for a reason that is fitting to his lifestyle and that is wonderful for him and his family. But is it wonderful for his spiritual life? You know, in a class that I had recently, we were told to do what the teacher called a time map. We had to write down all the activities that we have, and then we had to estimate the amount of time that we spent on each activity. Now, the professor wanted us to add up the time and see where we were spending our hours each week and what we had room to add. I realized early on, the one thing missing from my time map was time with God. Now, in my defense, I was not thinking in that way while I was doing the time map because we were in the middle of our 2-week of intensive classes, and with all the reading and the homework that we were doing, my mind just wasn't in that aspect. I had school with about 40 hours a week, and my reading that I estimated at about 35 hours a week. Then I had family, my hours working at the school cafe that I knew I was going to be doing after intensive. Then I had my time that I spent preparing for Sunday worship here, as well as our time in worship, and the time that I spend coming early to run through my sermon. And then there was time spent on internet, television, and other things that just are not important, but eat up my time. Now, there are 168 hours in a week, and when I did all my math, I ended up accounting for about 120 to 140 hours a week. And that even included the nominal 6 hours I usually sleep each night. So where did the rest of the time go? I figured that I'm either really bad at math, a really bad estimator, or I'm simply spending time doing things that are of so little importance that I could not even think of them. More important than that was the fact that I am always feeling like I have no time for other things that I would like to do, like spending time in prayer or spending Sabbath time. So this means that I need to seriously rethink my time map and figure out how I can make sure to put time in my week specifically for time with God. Any of us can do this in a number of different ways, like simply taking our time in the morning with our cup of coffee and being in conversation with God. We could also use time in the evening before going to bed to have time with God in prayer. For me, I decided that a great time for me to be in Sabbath would be all the driving time that I spend going to Dubuque for work or school. I spend almost half of the days of my week going from Cascade to Dubuque to be in school and working at the school cafe. So I can spend that time talking to God. Now, the wonderful thing about taking time for God is it does not always have to be in prayer either. For me, I like to sing with my Christian songs on the radio. And that can be seen as wonderful time with God, worshiping and praising Him. Another example that I recently read about, which I would like to figure out a way to incorporate into my week somehow, is something that can be, it's also something that can be wonderful for my family and myself in many different ways, but it's called Emmaus walks. A guy by the name of Douglas Steer told a story to his friend about a Lutheran retreat master that he once knew. This master was of Persian descent and had a very thick accent. But this guy specialized in men's retreats. And upon arrival, he would put the men into pairs and send them on what Douglas heard as Emmaus walks. Now, he explained that he wondered for a long time what this Emmaus walk was that he was being sent on. Then one day he realized that because of the accent, he was understanding the man wrong, and that he was being sent with another man on an Emmaus walk. Now that name comes from the story in Luke in which two disciples are walking and talking with Jesus, although they don't recognize him until after he breaks bread with them, and then he disappears. Afterwards, as it says in Luke 24:32, were not our hearts burning within us while he was talking to us on the road, while he was opening the scriptures to us? I would like for Carrie and me to get into this type of practice in our lives and spend time walking and talking with God. And the wonderful thing about this is that it would not only help our relationship with God, but it could only be a benefit to our relationship with each other, as well as providing a benefit for physical health. Now, if I am being completely honest, in this busy world that we inhabit, finding time to do something like this is always harder than it sounds, and is even harder to force yourself to get into a routine that is out of your ordinary lives. I think it can be very hard to authentically practice the Sabbath because of how we are trained almost from birth to believe that time not spent making money or progressing in the world is a waste. And that's especially true for those in positions of poverty where taking a day off is just not an option. Or for those in positions that focus on working so others can have a day of rest. There are many people in our society who do actually attend worship on Sundays, and yet they still get no rest. Then there are others who wait all week for the weekend to come along just to have it filled with activities and never go to any kind of a worship service. God knows us. He knows that we need rest, quiet time, and time to refresh ourselves. The Sabbath was God's gift to humanity. See, we are not made for the Sabbath. The Sabbath was made for us. The Sabbath should be a day, or if we can, just a part carved out of a day, to rest in the Lord. Some time that we set aside to be with God. And Jesus knew that the Sabbath day did not always mean that no work should be done on this day, as he freed a woman from her illness. He knew that much like pastors in today's society, there are certain types of work that still need to be done. So we need to find some Sabbath time that we can each keep close to us and keep holy. We do need to keep the Sabbath holy as a time of rest and to be a sacred time of a day or a whole day and to be simply one with Christ. My hope for each and every one of you today is that you find a day or just a small portion of a day to keep as your Sabbath time, your personal time with the Lord. Peace and love to you all.